Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vicky and it's an absolute pleasure to be welcoming you to this week's homeschooling drop-in with myself and the ever-lovely Ailsa Clark. I'm co-founder and director of Vilo Sky. We are a social enterprise that focuses on creating inclusive workplace cultures. And our recent focus has been definitely squarely in the camp of supporting working parents, and particularly during the homeschooling period, which fingers crossed is almost coming to an end. So the way that we normally run these sessions is Ailsa and I will have a chat about our topic of the week, which this week is balancing work time, school time and home time, downtime. And then we will just invite any questions that any of our live viewers want to ask right now. We'll talk about some of our frustrations of the week and our wins of the week, and then we'll move on to Ailsa's top tips at the end of the conversation as well. So I have two children. I've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So my 5-year-old has just gone back to school this week, and I'm happy to expand on how that is going in a few moments time. And yeah, just it's been a real challenge balancing homeschooling with full-time work as well. So yeah, these sessions have been fantastic just as a form of self-therapy for me too. So Ailsa, would you like to introduce yourself? And if you want to, as usual, dive straight into your wins and frustrations, then please do feel free.
Fabulous. I'm Ailsa. I am mum of one, an 8-year-old boy, and I am a teacher of, I keep saying 16, but it's actually 17 years now, 17 years experience, secondary and now primary as well. And I work also in third sector. So my work at the moment is very flexible and around my husband's hours, which are fixed, and my son's homeschooling, which means that I work some very, very strange times. But yeah, kids still off school. We're all still relatively sane. My win of the week is very, very rarely I feel like super mum, but this morning was one of these times. I had a 4-hour conference with about 300 people in it. Thankfully, I wasn't speaking at it, but I had to be online. It was also my husband's birthday and my child had to do all the schoolwork. And I managed to make my husband's birthday breakfast, log in and follow everything that was going on while simultaneously doing inferential skills and reading and then probability.
That is very impressive. I'm pretty sure that you're a super mum all of the time, Ailsa. I think you're waiting.
That's my efficiency gone for the rest of the year. So that's definitely my win of the week. My frustration of the week, I think, is lack of sleep. And that is partly because I'm working funny times to fit around everyone else, partly because my child's not sleeping very well, which is quite common in lockdown for kids, and partly because I need to step away from the iPhone.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think sleep is perhaps this topic we're going to touch on a little bit today.
Yeah, definitely. Wins and frustrations, Vicky?
So there's the obvious win that Isla has gone back to school this week, but that's not actually the win that I'm going to talk about. I'm really, really happy that as an effect of Isla going back to school, my son Dexter is also back into a more solid routine. So what we've done is get Dexter to walk to school at the same time that Isla does, as just a way of getting him out of the house. So I don't know if you can recall from last week, like one of my real frustrations was exercise and not getting the kids out that much. And I found that really hard throughout homeschooling. So to have that set time, and he goes and picks her up as well. So 2 times a day now, guaranteed that Dexter is getting out, and obviously I know that Isla is out as well. So that just feels like a massive win. And I think as a tip or a bit of advice for anybody whose children are still at home, to bake that in as a routine in the morning and evening, if they're struggling to get the kids out, like it's just really, really helped. So I don't know, if a walk to pick up a bagel in the morning or just anything, just find some purpose for it in a day, just to bake that into the routine. It's been great because I just was really worried that the kids weren't getting out enough. So that's a massive win. My frustration has been my actual motivation with the whole homeschooling thing this week. So I think because Isla's gone back, I've been off work as well to get some study done. So it's taken the pressure off a lot with homeschooling, but I feel like it's taken the pressure off too much. And I've been a little bit too blasé with Dexter this week. I think, and it will be interesting how this, what happens when all of the schools go back and people start to migrate fully back to work. But I think it's just a bit of exhaustion. You know, Isla's gone back and it's just sort of come to me a bit, and with having the pressure off because I'm off work and only one child to homeschool, but it's just like I need that time.
Yeah. And also, if you're talking brain-based stuff like we did last week, we talk about everybody kind of globally living in that kind of fight, flight, freeze, high alert part of their brain. One of, I'm not at all saying that Ayla puts you there, but you have one less kind of thing to juggle every day.
Yeah.
She's back at school. And so you have that little bit of cognitive space, and your brain's probably just going, okay, can we relax a bit now?
Yeah, no, totally feels like that. Totally. And I think what's going to be interesting is how this translates into motivation with work.
Yeah.
When the kids are back, like we're probably going to have to take a bit of a breather. And recognize that might be coming, because it's not going to be easy to just dive straight back into it. You know, you don't just transfer one from the other. So I think that massively leads onto our subject for today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is work time, balancing work time, school time, and downtime. Do you want to start on this? I mean, what's your views on where to go? I've got plenty of my own.
Work time, school time, downtime.
How to balance it all.
How to balance it.
Have you found balancing it?
I haven't, to be perfectly honest. A lot of the time, the thing that has taken the backseat for me is my own health and exercise. I think it is doing the best you can with the situation that you have, and that situation changes day to day depending on what your demands are for work, what the kids' demands are, what the weather's like. So I think what I try and do, the same way as a lot of people would do actually, is sit down on a Sunday night and plan my week and plan when the deadlines are and when I have space to work uninterrupted, which is not very very frequent at the moment, and try and plan in slots for me to work, slots for me to help Archie, slots for me to exercise. The downtime tends to come at night when the wee one's in bed. My husband and I have had to consciously say, we're going to leave our phones in another room and we're not watching crap on the telly, you know, and actually talking to each other, because otherwise you feel like you waste an evening. So balancing, I would say, is a mixture of planning and just with a little bit of inbuilt flexibility and a recognition that you're not going to go out for a walk in a 4-state gale, and it's been really windy here this week. So how do you deal with it, Vicky?
Well, I mean, I've just made a note there about like just that feeling, that absolute need to make the most of every single minute, like you just mentioned, wasting time watching TV. Well, actually, for me, watching rubbish TV is downtime, like just a way to totally switch my brain off. So I think a lot of the time it's like have you earned it, isn't it? It's like, have you earned that downtime, or is it something that you should be doing instead? And what's been absolutely a bit of a frustration of mine with the approaches taken by some employers, not all, but some, through homeschooling, is that it's seen as being something that employees need to make up in the evenings and at weekends. And to me, that's not how this should have been seen. Like, there's 24 hours in a day, and evenings and weekends are purposely for downtime. Like they should be, because nobody should be switched on 24/7. It's mentally not healthy to be doing that. So having the kids at home during your working day means that you, irrespective of homeschooling, to be fair, you're on with the children. You only have another full-time job that you're doing. So you're doing 2 jobs, whereas before, if you're working full-time, you were doing 1. So it shouldn't be that the pressure is then put on to shift that work into the evenings, because then you're losing that downtime. And I think that has been a lot of the expectation and has as workers, we perhaps have a tendency to feel that we should do that as well. And I think that comes from the whole presenteeism and desire to,
I was going to ask, how much is that actually coming from companies and organisations, and how much is it a kind of internal working model that you have to catch up?
I think probably the second one is absolutely there. Like it is something that we just feel we have to do without stopping to maybe think, is that what's expected? But it probably comes from cultural pressures on delivery, I think, a little bit. Like if you work in a place where your workload has reduced as a result of homeschooling, then you're not being asked to do as much, then that would be great. So your delivery expectations have been reduced, and that pressure isn't there, and it would be something that you're just sort of putting on yourself. But if not, then, and you are getting asked things, or there's deadlines still that were the same as they were when homeschooling wasn't an issue, then obviously
that's difficult.
That is difficult to manage. So I mean, I understand businesses need to run. There's still work that needs to be delivered and done. But the best support I think that could have happened was to slow things down, or recognise that there would have been a slowing down of things during this time. And so I think it would be really interesting with people who engage with our drop-ins, and just broader, like what that experience has been like.
I read actually a good piece of advice in a newspaper that was basically encouraging employees in lockdown, when they were being given tasks and they didn't have enough time, to email back and say, I've got this and I've got this, and I've got this amount of time. What task would you like me to prioritise? Right. Now, I think it takes quite a lot of guts to do that.
It does. Yeah. I think, I mean, that can be, as you say, takes a lot of guts. Like, that's also pressure to ask employees to do that. It would be so much nicer if employers initiated that instead. Like I said, there's been some great examples of where that has happened, and employers have been really supportive. But I've certainly heard anecdotally where they haven't as well. And that's been part of the issue, I think. So not having that downtime, and not having that downtime just is so unproductive in the long run. It creates stress, not just for the person, but
doesn't make good business sense, does it?
But the family as well, like for our children. It doesn't help us be good with them either. And I've definitely seen the effects of that. And so, it's just not beneficial for anybody. It doesn't help us feel better or more productive in any of the ways that we need to be right now. So it's almost self-perpetuating, which I think is a reason why it's important to try things like you say, maybe to just think about prioritization. So what about sleep then? You've mentioned sleep. What's happening with your sleep?
Well, to be perfectly honest, my child is atypical of children. He can go 3-4 days without sleep, but that's because of his additional needs. So sleep is not really happening because the wee guy isn't sleeping, but sleep also, I think, for me, is a wee bit out of whack because I'm going to bed later. And because we don't have the school run, the commute, whatever, we don't have to wake up. I'm usually up at 6:15. I'm getting up at 7. So I find it quite difficult to switch my brain off as well, because I'm working at odd times. I'm working later than I would normally. The stuff's never done, and I think that's common amongst all working parents who have kids at home at the moment. The work is never done. You've always got stuff to do, and not building in that downtime at night is your brain still racing.
There are so many tips, aren't there, for getting good night sleeps, and it involves all the things I don't really listen to, which is, as you mentioned, not looking at your phone, not drinking caffeine after a certain point, not having that screen time, actually getting off the laptop just before bed. These are all things that actually do work, but I think right now are a lot harder to do.
I think they become harder as you go through lockdown as well. It's almost like the further away in time you get from your set routine, the more it just ever so incrementally goes out of kilter. But one thing I found, I was really crap at this week, I've been grumpy. And Tuesday night, I just said to my husband, right, I'm going up to what used to be our garage where we are at the moment. There's a wee kind of sofa and everything in here. I'm going up there and I'm just going to have an evening to myself. And I expected him to pull a face, and I actually think he was quite relieved because we miss that space, don't we, when we're all in the house together.
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah. I watched whatever I wanted to watch that he wouldn't have liked, and I slept really, really well that night. I think it's just that there's physical space, but also that mental, right, I've reached capacity now and I need to do something. Yeah. I think what we do is get better at realising that we're heading to capacity before we get there.
No, sure. I mean, it is way easier said than done. But you mentioned there about just sharing the load. I think that's vitally important, isn't it? Where we have partners, or if we have people within our bubbles and support networks that we can ask to just share some of this load. It's like, use it. I think that is absolutely essential right now. When you have it, use it. And where you do have partners, if one is taking the majority share of childcare or feels that that's the case, then have a conversation to say that this needs to be shared across, because like you say, capacity is not good, because if you get to capacity then you've got no room or maneuver. We talked a little bit last week about kids sleeping as well. We had a question about older kids just getting out of sleeping patterns and stuff. So what about the kids? Like, how do we help them? Certainly for us this week, obviously getting up for Isla going to school has got us into a little bit more of a routine, but it's not actually stopped the kids going to bed late, because we were already in that, and now it's quite hard. Earlier.
I think you need to move it incrementally. You know, so if you have Dexter still at home and Isla at school, I don't know how much later they're staying up at night, but maybe move it 15 minutes every night or every couple of nights, rather than saying, right, it's school bedtime now. It's almost like their body clocks need to readjust over maybe a period of a week and a half, just to kind of gently bring it back. And then
what I've noticed as well, for some weird reason, is that our mealtime had shifted in the evening too. So that had kind of got slightly later, which was, I think it just, the bedtime being later came first. And I think because that came later, then it felt like there wasn't as much urgency to get tea as early as we needed. So I think there's that angle. Perhaps it's all the routine bits, making sure that they're back to the time.
So the way we do it before the start of a term, after summer holiday, and I think it's quite common for a lot of parents, is you start thinking, okay, what routine do they need to get into? How much sleep should they have a night? And then just gradually pull it back. And if things have been a bit more free flowing in terms of structure, start putting them back, you know, your meal time, so breakfast time, your lunch time, your exercise time, and just bring that structure back in, so it's not a huge shock to them when they go back to school.
Yeah, definitely. And probably just prepare ourselves for the fact that it's going to take a couple of weeks at least to adjust again, and be okay with that. Be grumpy children and grumpy parents for a little bit.
Plus,
grumpier parents.
And bear in mind, at the end of March, the clocks are going to go forward as well, and that'll throw everything out again. So
I'm always jet lagged at that point. Exercise with sleep as well. So yesterday actually, for some reason I was exhausted throughout the day. Like it felt like I never properly woke up, and I haven't been doing exercise to any extent that I would have liked to since this all started. But last night, I went for a run despite being rubbish, because I was feeling so bad that I was like, I need to get out of the house, and I need to do some exercise, I think, to try and give me some energy back. Plus I've got an assignment that I needed to finish today, so I really couldn't be in a shattered place. And you know what? Worked a treat. And I said to myself, look, all I've got to do is go and run once around the block, 5 to 10 minutes, and that's all. And as normally happens, once you get going, it's not as bad. and I ended up doing over 20 minutes, and it was just great. It was exactly what I needed. So yeah, I don't know if that helps anybody.
I think it probably does, yeah.
Proof.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thought of, oh, I have to go for a run, or whatever exercise you do. Hi, Isla. Hi.
Twice in 2 weeks.
Oh, it was Dexter last week, now it's Isla. I think that particularly if we're not as fit as we were before lockdown, the thought of going out for a 5K run when it's going to be probably a little bit uncomfortable and you're going to feel a bit demoralized because you're not as fit as you were. I think you have to adjust your expectations in exercise as well as work and homeschooling, you know, and just, yeah, I think it's a really, really good tip. That is just do 5-10 minutes and you end up doing more.
I must credit my friend Jin Lally for that, because she made the really great observation that the motivation with exercise comes after you've done it, not before.
Totally.
So if you start doing it, you find your motivation increases. And that's certainly like what happened yesterday. But I think even like you say, those expectations, so you don't have to go for a run, go for a walk, like just the fresh
air. What I've been doing.
Get your gym gear on, so you feel like that mindset thing. You're in a different headspace.
Absolutely, mindset. Yeah. I mean, so I used to do long distance running in the days before I was a parent, and you don't have time to train for marathons. What I'm doing at the moment is walking, about 6 miles every day, every other day, and it's better because you're outside and it's better than vegetating on the couch, isn't it?
I think so. Well, I mean, for me, it all comes back to this point, like when we think about balancing all the areas of our life, it's about, and you know, that need to make every moment count. Like, are we using our time in the most efficient way? And doing exercise is helpful we know it helps with sleep and stress. So if it alleviates some of that pressure, it actually should be quite high up on your prioritization list, because it's going to make those minutes you're spending at work or homeschooling more productive. So you don't need as many of them to be getting done what you need to do. So it sort of does feel logical, but I think it just is so easy to push it to the side, because actually it's very nice to do exercise sometimes. So no, definitely it really did help yesterday. So I think finding those slots, as you said, and I think one thing as well about balancing, it's recognizing that it doesn't just have to be contained in one day. I think it's like, you know, having your 5 a day, you don't, if you had spread that out across a week, you're sort of okay if your intake is there. It's the same with all of these things. Like if you've got a particularly busy day at work, don't feel you have to exercise on that day as well. Or if you've got a lighter day, then maybe that's day you can focus on with homeschooling stuff. So when you talked about planning your time, it's looking past.
It's looking across the week.
And just thinking about that, schedule it. So some people haven't been working from home as well, or haven't been working full time. So do you think that for those kind of circumstances, that there's a different approach to balance? Would you say that there may have been a tendency to feel more pressured with the homeschooling side?
Yeah, so I mean, if people have not been working from home, I guess they've been key workers, in which case their kids should have a hub place, or a parent at home, or a carer or a relative who can deal with the homeschooling thing.
Well, I guess it's that balance thing, isn't it? Again, if like one parent is at home working from home and the other parent is perhaps a key worker and not there, then it may be putting pressure on one parent and the other literally physically can't be there.
Yeah, and I think in lockdown, if you had one parent who was a key worker, you were entitled to a hub place, whereas I think this lockdown you need both to be key workers. So yeah, that does. And it would be interesting to know how many parents who are at home and are married or living with a key worker, how many of them have had to ask for furlough or have had to drop their hours.
You
know, and I think it's very difficult to balance. if you're a single parent as well. Yeah, so people who are working part-time, you would think that it would be easier to balance that in homeschool, but that's not always the case.
I wonder if, because sometimes the reason working part-time, people working part-time, they weren't working part-time to accommodate homeschooling, so there's probably something else that's been shifted again. So I think that the concept of balancing all areas of your life, like it doesn't really matter what your circumstances are or how much paid work you think, there's a balance in there that is for everything. It's not just thinking about paid work.
I mean, your kids are at home all the time at the moment, so unless their P wanted to be your nursery, so you can be part-time, but you'd have to be pretty flexible as well about when you can work. It's a toughie.
Yeah, I think there's lots of considerations, and the important thing is to look at every case on a case-by-case basis. Like the reactions to homeschooling and lockdown are obviously going to have varied. There's people with different caring considerations that they're having to consider in addition to homeschooling, that when homeschooling stops, they may take over. There's new caring considerations to be thinking about going forward as well. So I think it's to not feel that there's almost a hierarchy of different balance situations that matter more than others. I think in any circumstance that we're in right now, employed, self-employed, flexible, whatever, it's really important to still keep an eye on that balance and make sure that the things where the self-care involved are still being looked at as well. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you think is important for us to think about in balancing this? What about for the children?
You mean balancing homeschool and giving their parents enough space to do some work?
Well,
or do you mean
I think that's
exercise downtime?
I think there's a couple of things that I think about from the children's perspectives. It's the separation for them with school and home, like how they're, as you've mentioned numerous times, in this weird scenario where they're schooling at home. So there's that part of it. So how do they get a break? But also I think, the space to create for parents to work, because work is actually important for lots of us. There's also a tendency to diminish the importance of work, but
I mean, I think for kids are pretty visual a lot of the time, and I know I said this in one of our other webinars, that they have a space where they work that's almost like their classroom, and they have their folders or whatever, and it's there, and everything is organized at the start of their school day, and it goes away at the end of their school day. So when they finish for the day, that visual reminder that they're in school is removed and they're now at home. And the same thing can happen for your workspace as well. It may not work for everybody, but I find that I'm in a better frame of mind to work if I actually have work clothes on and look like I would when I am going to work. And that kind of indicates to the wee one that it's dad's time to be with him, and mum's working, and I'm lucky here that I have a physical space which is away from the house where I can sit and work. And I think also timetable, planner, whatever with the kids, so they've got a visual indication of how their day is blocked off. My wee guy is big on colours as well, so green is exercise, outside play, and then work is blue, and then so he can visually see when does my school day start and end. There's telly time, there's everything else. That works with kids in a range of ages. If it's somebody little, you can have actual visual symbols. Teenagers, you just have your chart.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good tip, like the visualization side. It's a different way of thinking, isn't it? But it's more aligned to the child's brain.
Yep. totally, totally. And I would say, you know, you set it up the night before as well. So, you know, this is what tomorrow's looking like for you. This is what tomorrow's looking like for me. Let's get everything sorted. And also at the end of the day, what are we going to do? You know.
Sounds good. Right, well, I'm very aware of time, and I literally feel, as usual, that I could keep talking to you about this for the rest of the evening. But let's move on to your 3 tips, top tips, and then we'll just do some closing comments.
Okay, cool. So top tips, I guess I would say get the stuff ready the night before. I know people do this when their kids are going to school in a normal day, or if the kids are older, get them to get it ready the night before. So that when they start their school day at home, if you like, they've got, and the way I have it for Archie is he's got a certain colour folder for literacy, a certain colour for numeracy, and you know, all the sheets are printed out and they're in there. Or if stuff is online, is it downloaded, is it accessible, put it in folders, set it up the night before. It might take you 20 minutes, but it means that their day starts off purposeful in the morning. As a teacher, you wouldn't allow your class to come in and sit down without having the materials there for them, because it saves you hassle and it means they're in the right frame of mind to work from the start. So I would say prepare the night before, set it up the night before, and your work as well, if it makes it easier for you, just so it's there and ready to go. It sounds basic, but see when it gets to 10 o'clock and you're absolutely knackered and you can't be bothered, if you let that roll over to the next morning, you feel disorganized and the kids kind of go off the boil and their attention wanders. So have it there. The next thing I would say is, and this came to me in a flash of, as I said, either genius or desperation the other day, use games and stuff that you have in the house to help the kids to learn. So obviously this doesn't work if you physically have to be at your desk and allowing them to work independently. But if you have a little bit of time where you can bridge the gap and be with them and help them to learn, make it fun, particularly if they're younger. So Archie had to learn about apostrophe use yesterday. And he had a worksheet which had the expanded form of words and the contracted form with apostrophes in. Archie was not up for it, and I don't blame him. Archie wanted to play memory chess, which is one of his favourite games. So what I did is so there's a dice here, which has different colours on it. And I put a different coloured dot on every single one of these, cut them all up. And we played memory chess. So we had to match up the expanded form with the contracted form. So if he rolled a green, for example, he had to find the contracted form of those words using the apostrophe, and then he had to try and pick a green out of his wee memory chess thing here. So they've all got different colours on the bottom. And you can do similar things with Jenga. You can test their knowledge with Jenga. You know, if they get it right, then they can move a block. If they get it wrong or have to ask for help, we move two. You can, all these things, pie face as well. Kids love pie face. All these kind of things you can, and you can use it for times tables. You can use it for vocabulary. You can use it to test their knowledge of themes in the crucible when they're in higher. You know, you can. I use a lot of games in my classroom as well, and I'm a secondary teacher. So they're learning without feeling the stress, and you're also. It's a time-saving device because you're connecting with them at the same time. That was quite a long top tip, sorry about that. Third one, I would say, and it's something that I'm trying to do, is try and give yourself downtime by not being on social media or on your phone all the time. So what I've done is I've found the time limit on my iPhone, which switches off the apps after 8 o'clock at night, and it dims them. So I have a physical reminder, a visual reminder that those apps are off. If I need something, I can still override it, but I'm less likely to just tap on Instagram or Facebook or my mail because I need to go through another couple of steps to get there. So I would say I've saved a lot of time. Actually, I've gone from 4 hours on my phone a day to 2. And that's that is allowing me headspace, and it's actually bizarrely allowing me to feel a bit healthier, that I'm not constantly connected.
Yeah, I think that many people who talk about dealing with stress and anxiety would say get off phones is a good way to
Get off phone.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Great top tips as always. And that just leaves us to close. I think we've had a little bit of a longer session today, but there is no harm in that whatsoever. I can just hear the door starting to open as well, so I'll quickly wrap up. And as usual, it just remains to be said that we're all, as working parents, doing an absolutely amazing job. It's an absolute pleasure to speak to you again this week, Ailsa.
Pleasure to be here.
And I look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week.
Cool. See you then.
See you later. Bye.